step into that real estate law. So just like you guys can't practice outside of your real estate license, I can't either. So
Absolutely. Well, we'll go ahead and get started.
okay.
Thanks everyone for hopping on. For those of you who do not know, Dr. Dawn Kennedy is with us this morning. She is the CEO of HRRA, and she's graciously extended some time this morning to kind of help us navigate through some of this obscurity of course, everything that's kind of going on, as we're all familiar with the last few months, and just kind of give us some updates and things like that. And then most importantly, leave it open for Q&A. So hopefully you all have brought some questions for Dr. Kennedy. But with that being said, I know you have a presentation. I will go ahead and turn this screen over. Go ahead and...
You are now the host. Okay,
yep.
Awesome.
There you go. And if you do happen to see anybody else join, I guess just try and admit them.
Yes.
I'll stand by too. But yeah, we'll go from there. So again, thank you, Doctor. And
thank you.
Yeah.
So can everybody see the screen that says the power of our strength in numbers?
Do not see that. Just
okay.
See
all right. Thank you. All right. That helps me. So Ben, I will have to go back over here. All right. Come on. Where are you? Give me a minute. I'm trying to, it's not seeing the screen I want it to see.
That's fine. Yep.
Yes. Come on now. Show all windows. It's probably because I have a gazillion of these open. Does anybody else work like that where they keep 25 tabs open? I thought I had closed everything before the meeting.
I do that, and then my computer goes through a software update, and then I lose all my tabs.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, what was I working on?
Yeah. No, I'm not sure I do, because I think what's happening is that I have so many tabs open, which I thought I got rid of, that I can't find there we go. Yay. And then I'm going to admit somebody, and then I hit share.
All right. Yep.
Now can you see it? Oh,
yep.
yay.
Perfect.
Good. There we go. Oh, whew. That was scary for me. So anyway, I wanted, most of you know me. Thank you for the very, very nice introduction. And thank you all for showing up today. I think you all are critically important to whether or not our industry is going to survive this little issue. And I don't mean to minimize it, but because I know it's a big issue, but it is what it is, and we're going to get into it. So it goes without saying, but I am not an attorney, and I cannot explain the legal concepts to you, but I can help explain how the settlement is going to impact you. And I can explain how NAR is responding. And I hope to explain why your membership in the organization is absolutely critical to the long-term health of our industry. So we'll just go over some basic stuff. You already saw that before. What I always like to emphasize is that my son is a broker owner, much like Barry. He's independent, got about 102 agents. And what hurts you hurts me through him. So, I mean, I've got a dog in the fight right with you. And I always hope that you know that I feel your pain. I know what you're experiencing, because I hear it almost every day on the phone from my son. And my stepfather was a realtor, and my brother was a realtor. So, and I've been in it 20 years. So that's a little bit of my background. So this basically, the whole case basically is an antitrust case. And anybody who wants to jump in and ask a question, just do it, because I'll keep talking otherwise. I know that you all take antitrust with your principles and all of that, but I do want to talk just briefly about it. So antitrust has a couple of different things. One is price fixing, and that is called a per se violation. And that is what the jury found us as an organization and some MLSs and some of the larger franchises guilty of. Other things are joint boycotts, dividing customers up, where it's like, hey, I'll sell in Virginia Beach and I won't sell in Norfolk if you won't sell in Virginia Beach type thing. Tying in is a vertical agreement where one party uses market power to force another person or to force their company to buy another product. So this one's really interesting. There are 3 states called Thompson states, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama, and they cannot require realtor membership to be a part of the MLS, because the federal court that oversees those 3 states determined that buying realtor membership in order to get MLS services was in fact an antitrust violation under the tying agreement. We are fortunate here again because we don't require realtor membership for our MLS, and in some ways that's a great protection for our association. What the courts found us guilty of was a per se violation. So what per se means is in and of itself, it's like, it's not innocent till proven guilty on a per se violation. Per se violations are considered to be like so unreasonable and so egregious that you're automatically guilty, if that makes sense. Remember, this isn't a criminal trial, it's a civil trial. So the ruling's a little bit different. So when somebody is accused of violating the Anti-Sherman Act, which we were, they have 3 different ways that they can look at it. One is the per se rule, which the judge did. The other one is the rule of reason. And number 3 is the quick look. I'm not going to explain what the quick look is because I don't really understand it, but I do understand what the per se is. And this is the per se rule. It's right from the U.S. Department of Justice and federal guidelines. And hold on one sec. I'll make sure somebody's not trying to get in. But it's right from the guidelines. So it's not me saying this. It's the United States government. They analyze the restraints they feel are so inherently anti-competitive to the market that they warrant condemnation without further inquiry. That's really important because that's what happened in this case. They don't even look at the effects on the market or the existence of objective competitive justification. And that's our whole point as a trade organization, that there is a reason we operate the way that we do, and it benefits the consumer. It benefits both parties, but we weren't really allowed to present that. On a per se, if a judge takes a case and says it's a per se case, the first thing is the plaintiff, that would have been Ketchmark, the attorney for Sitzer and Burnett. The plaintiff is only required to prove that the specific anti-competitive conduct took place. They do not need to demonstrate the conduct's competitive unreasonableness. They don't even have to demonstrate it has a negative effect on the market. They don't have to prove anything on a per se rule. Second, under the per se rule, defendants are not entitled to justify their behavior based on any objective competitive justifications. Third, plaintiff has less responsibility to analyze the methodology and where the restraint is. So basically, I've been reading a lot where people are, why didn't NAR put on a stronger case? They weren't even entitled to on a per se violation. It was almost like I could say the trial was about how much you're going to pay, not whether or not your behaviors are anti-competitive. And I hope that makes sense. And again, the judge determined that it was per se and that the defendants, which are all of us, were not entitled to justify our behavior based on any objective competitive justifications, such as it benefits the consumer, a free and open market. Commissions are always negotiable. this is the actual verdict. I thought it was interesting because it was so incredibly small. Like literally, this is it. I got it from the courts, but basically they're said, hey, you guys are violating the Sherman Antitrust Act, and that's it. So the next steps were the individuals. Oh, go ahead.
Just papers, but not papers, but he said 12:15.
Okay. I'm not sure I heard you, but okay. So
Was that
one of the,
did somebody have a question, or
yeah.
maybe just make sure to mute yourself if you're not already muted?
Thanks, man. Okay. So what happened after that, after the judgment? Some of the larger corporate franchises started settling. I think you all know that. NAR determined it was no longer going to appeal and it was going to offer a settlement, and we will go into that in a moment. It's important to note that Berkshire Hathaway Home Services has not settled. And that may have some bearing on all of this in the end. I'm sure you all know that Berkshire Hathaway is owned by Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world. And so he may continue the fight, but everybody else, I believe, has settled. And so hopefully you can hear this. I like to play it. It's Katie Johnson. She is NAR's chief legal counsel, and she's kind of explaining why we settled. And hopefully it will work. And maybe not. Okay. No, that is a not. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. The reason NAR settled was because of all the copycat cases. I think you were all familiar with, all of a sudden there was one in New York and then one in California, and it was just going crazy. One of the things that I think played a big factor is they started to look at suing the individual brokerages and not the corporations. And then we saw one case where they were suing a team leader and the whole team. And what NAR said, we've got to stop the bleeding. Basically, we need to stop this before it gets any worse. And this is very much what the Camp Lejeune settlement is like. What the settlement offers says is that, okay, we're going to settle, although we admit no wrongdoing. That's the first part. And now anybody who has a claim anywhere in the United States, this is your window, right, to get in on that class action settlement. I saw postcards that have been circulating here for people to, have you sold a home between now and XYZ. And then the really fine print, it says the average payout will be $5. And that's the way class action suits actually work. But by being able to do that, we have set boundaries on who anybody can sue, because this is it. If the judge and the court accepts our settlement offer, people have a certain amount of time to get in on that, and then it's over, and we cannot be sued for it again. And that is why they did what they did. The settlement did not cover everybody, and we'll go over that in a moment. So what are the next steps? It has not been approved. That's one thing. One of the things that they did agree to was to take out the buyer compensation can no longer be provided in the association-owned MLS. And again, this is very important that we understand we are unique. First, the judge has to approve it. They're talking July or maybe August as to when it's approved. The realtor-owned brokerages, again, are subject to the settlement. So RAIN is not subject to the settlement. Any changes in practice, if it's approved in July, would go into effect in mid-July. And then they are going to, I gotta get out of here. Hold on one sec. Sorry, guys. There we go. They're going to move to have litigation about the MLS cooperative compensation model rule stayed or paused as to NAR pending the settlement improvement process. However, many MLSs are already doing it. They're already saying, you know what, we're not going to put buyer compensation in the MLS. So key terms of the agreement is that you have to have a buyer brokerage agreement. The state of Virginia has required this for over 30 years. So you all should be used to filling out a buyer broker agreement. The agreement provides a mechanism for nearly all brokerage entities that had a residential transaction in 2022 that did not exceed $2 billion to obtain releases if they choose to. And NAR has, again, put an agreement into place that compensation will not be offered. It's really important that you understand that people who, any brokerage that had over 2 billion in volume is not covered by this lawsuit. They're not covered by the settlement. NAR is going to pay out $418 million over 4 years. We have been told that it will not affect dues for this year and it will not affect dues for 2025. So we have been told they will not, this won't affect dues for 2025. I don't know what 2026 is going to look like. And I don't know if they're, you know, it's interesting the way it's worded, because perhaps they could increase it and say it's not for this. I don't know. But right now, I think they're really promoting that we're not going to raise your dues because of this settlement. Again, we deny any wrongdoing, and we feel that the consumers are actually protected with our current model because everything's negotiable. And so it gives the consumer on both sides of the transaction maximum flexibility. One of the things I've been asked in new member orientation and by some agents is, you know, what does this mean for me? Like, what should I do? Always continue to express that your commissions are negotiable between a broker and a client. Use your buyer broker agreement. Explain exactly what services and value you are providing and how much you charge. For buyers, this includes the options for offer of compensation from a listing broker or paying for your services directly or a combination of both. For sellers, this includes still the option to allow an offer of compensation to be made. And if so, how much and under what terms? Some of where we landed is the idea, and I don't know if you've heard it on the media at all, that somehow a buyer's agent doesn't do very much. And I believe that agents may have said to their buyer client, I'm free. You don't have to worry about paying me. My services are free. And that's really where a lot of this came from, because it's like, well, if you're not even charging for the service, like, what are you doing? So we really need to be very clear about what you do and what you get paid for when you, even before you sign that agreement. One of the things that I'm asked is, what should I tell my clients about the verdicts? NAR is suggesting that you tell them it's neither supported by the law or the facts presented in the case. The trial had a very pro-consumer rule. That was that per se rule. Offers can be any amount, can vary over time, are based on things like service and the market, and they are negotiable. Always been negotiable. Neither the buyer nor the seller broker gets paid until the purchase is closed and what they've agreed to in writing. The offer of compensation practice ensures efficient, transparent, and accessible marketplaces where sellers can sell their home for more and have their home seen by more buyers, while buyers have more choices of homes and can afford representation. One of the agents that I know actually went through with this seller and said, if we offer no compensation, this is the likely outcome, and here's what your net sheet would look like. If we offer X, then here's what your net sheet would look like. If we offer Z, here's what your net sheet would look like. And in the end, the clients actually decided that, yeah, we're going to offer compensation because they're not paying for the buyer's representation. That's just a misleading theory. What they're paying for is somebody to bring in an ample pool of qualified eligible buyers. That's what they're paying for. Because that's exactly what happens. Where do you find help? This is a really big part. There's facts.realtor, and we'll go on that in just a minute. I'm not going to try and play the video. There's a full FAQ answering questions about interested party contributions. Right now, it's not clear. And so NAR has, and along with the Mortgage Bankers Association, are working with FHA, the Federal Housing Financing Agency, to make that clear about, can a third party pay the compensation to the buyer broker? That's what we need a little bit of clarity on. And again, nothing's happened yet. It's not, nothing has happened yet. Not till July, and even then, maybe not. Listing brokers should continue to offer compensation. You just can't do it through the MLS. You just can't communicate through the MLS. However, RAIN is not part of this settlement, and that will be up to RAIN what they do. And I don't know, they're kind of being quiet about what they're going to do. They may be waiting to see what happens in July. But at this point, we don't think it's going to, we don't think independent party contributions are going to affect the compensation, the commission agreements in any way. So we'll see. The big question that's looming for everybody is, what about VA loans that have a prohibition on buyers paying commission directly? That's the big one here. VA has not addressed whether or not they're going to change their rules. We have engaged with the VA on this issue, again, along with our partners, the Mortgage Bankers Association. They recently sent out a letter kind of detailing all the things that are going to happen if potentially that everything goes through with the settlement, and they, they won't have to, they don't know exactly what's going to happen, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But we have written them a letter and said, hey, we're responsible for 20% of the gross domestic product. And these people, veterans, typically if they're using a VA loan, they are not getting, they're not a high level, high salary, high income person, typically, not always. And so the people who probably need the representation the most are the ones, if this stays the way it is, that may have the least representation. So another question was, can real estate commissions be financed? Not right now, not under our current mortgage system. Banks would treat a loan as a personal loan. If something had to happen where they had to take a loan to get the commission, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA do not allow commissions to be paid, to be added to the balance of the mortgage. So these are some things that more than ever, we need our political might. We need our strength in numbers, because we need to get these things changed. There's a huge thing on HRRA.com, our website, settlement resources. VAR suggests using the broker fee agreement. It's form 500. Your VAR forms are part of your membership benefit. They have, we have posted a do's and don'ts guide talking to the press. We do have live ABR coming with Adorna Carroll. That's April 23rd and 24th. She's going to talk about how to get paid when you're the buyer's agent. We have different things in HRRA magazine. In addition to our paid live course with Adorna, NAR is offering free online ABR. When I last looked, all the July classes were already full. So if you are going to do this, I would suggest you hop on and do it soon so you can get in a reasonable time. The ABR class has been rewritten completely. to address all these changes. And that is why NAR is offering it for free. But again, it's online. If you are a live learner, I would suggest that you register for a Dornis class, even though it's not free. So these are some things that NAR is doing to help us. But before we get into that, I'm going to see if I can get my screen smaller and go to facts.realtor.com. So. This is being updated like literally daily. And I want to make sure, can you see my current screen, or are we back to?
I can.
Okay, here it is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for responding. So I encourage you guys to go to this website. What you should be seeing, if my computer's working correctly, it says the facts for realtors. And
You can see it.
there's, yes. Good. So it looks like the FHA has already published something on guidance for seller paid commissions. So that is new since the last time I was on here. Here's the letter that we're working with the VA. This is the settlement briefing will give you just like a really comprehensive why we did what we did. And we're trying to respond to negative media because they don't understand. They are thinking that that the seller is going to reduce their price because they won't have to pay the buyer's commission. I mean, who does that, right? A house appraises for what it's going to appraise for. And I don't know of any seller who would say, gee, my house appraised for $250, but because I don't have to pay a commission, I'm going to reduce my price down to $240. No, they're just going to pocket the difference. Appraisal is what determines the price of a house. Market demand. If it's a high demand and a low supply, it's economics. That's what drives prices up, not our commissions. And so I really hope that you will read the statement of our response to President Biden with his remarks about how this is going to lower the housing costs for families. I actually think it might do the opposite. Any litigation updates are going to be on this site. There's a fact sheet that goes through everything. There's a Q&A on financing. And if you want to read the entire legal documentation of the settlement, it is available to you on this site. And as I said, every single day that thing is changing. So I would highly encourage that you actually go and look at it almost daily or at least weekly. And then we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. So one of the things I've been asked is, well, what is NAR doing for me? And what's happening? What are they doing for me? Well, in addition to that Facts.Realtor site, there's a whole bunch of there's a social media kit you can download for those of you who are really big into social media that gives very positive messaging to the consumer. There's consumer testimonials that you can post on your website. There's handouts of things that you can, give to your clients, your customers. Here's the social media assets. It's on that Facts.Realtor, but here's just an example of what a suggested post is. The National Association of Realtors does not set commissions. They are negotiable. We have a couple of different things. We have the 179 ways agents who are realtors are worth every penny of their compensation. So it focuses a lot on all the things that you do, big and small, that help your clients. You already saw this. This is our HRRA's little thing about why a realtor is different than a real estate agent. But one of the things that I really want to stress, and I know I stressed it the last time that I was here, is that now more than ever, we have to keep our voice strong. Our industry is definitely under attack. I have always said in new member orientation, everybody thinks you're making a fortune. And that is the problem. I think HGTV is one of the biggest detriments to our industry because they focus on certain markets that have extremely high-end luxury homes, and it gives the impression that you're all making just a ton of money. And whenever an entity is making a ton of money, you know, it's Adriana, if you could mute. Adriana, thanks. Thank you. I would say fears, false expectations, appearing real. We have strength in numbers, and our founders did not form NAR to give benefits to the members. They formed to be an influential political force to uphold and keep the industry strong. That's why we exist. Policing ourselves has kept us out of the courts for over a century, but now here we are. Without our strength in numbers, we lose all advocacy. And then I kind of listed, a lot of times people don't understand what that means. It means we make sure that there is no sales tax on your services when that comes up. Sales tax here is not that high. In Oklahoma, it was 8.5%. So on top of your FICA, Medicare, Social Security, FICA, Social Security, for those of you who don't know, FICA, Medicare, state income tax, federal income tax, we make sure that the states aren't charging you sales tax on top of all of that. We were kept essential workers. We did work with GSE reform. We were able to keep 1031 exchanges. We stopped an increase in the capital gains tax. We stopped the elimination of the home mortgage interest deduction. Home ownership is now part of the GI Bill. And as I said, we are working with the VA to make sure that those veterans are going to be represented somehow, some way. And we make sure there's not unnecessary occupational taxes where because you sold a home in a certain municipality, you have to pay a small tax. Those small taxes really add up when you're selling in multiple municipalities. So there's a lot. It's a lot to absorb. I know that. And we still are a little bit in a state of we don't know what's going to happen. Let me admit that person. Okay. And now I'm hopefully gave you some resources that you can look at. I'm just making sure everybody's still in. Do you have anybody have any questions at all as I'm stumbling through this early morning presentation? Here we go.
Any questions, anybody?
It's a lot. It's a lot to absorb.
Hey, Dr. Kennedy, I do have something. I know this is, I guess, more recent. I know there's been some chatter coming out regarding the DOJ and stepping in and everything. You know, and what type of influence that's going to have on this potential settlement. Do you have anything to address on that, or is it we just kind of
only that the courts, the appellate court did find that apparently the DOJ can renege on its agreement. And so that's where we are right now. This is a very, very old. It was the ILD. Do you remember that, Matt? Were you around when it was internet listing display instead of IDX? Okay.
No, but I do recall, but
yeah. So that was settled by, at the time, NAR's chief legal counsel, Lori Janik. And the settlement only went to I believe 2018 or 19. And it was really, I remember even saying, we don't have that anymore. We have IDX. There was this idea that at the time that when you all were sharing IDX is Internet Data Exchange, when you were all sharing, like on your website as everybody's listings, there was the idea that we weren't allowing other entities to do that. And what we finally got in that settlement was the caveat that you had to be involved in some form of brokerage in order to get an IDX feed. But that is now has expired. Now they're working on, they had an agreement that they settled, and we said, hey, DOJ, leave us alone. Everything's fine. We're pro-competitive. This case has already established that. So I don't even know why they're doing it exactly, but I do know that it has our appeal failed. I do know that. But I can send you some, as soon as I get information, I can send it out to you.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Yeah. One of the biggest things, I just think, if I can share a story, I'm a much better storyteller than I am a PowerPoint person. I look back to the American Medical Association. When I was a kid, that was on commercials, you know, approved by the American Medical Association, endorsed by the American Medical Association, 1 out of every 4 doctors in the American Medical Association. It was a very, very powerful, influential trade association, just like us. They now, I Googled, depends on what Google response you get. They now have 12 to 15% of our nation's doctors belong to the American Medical Association, only 12 to 15%. And they literally have lost such incredible political power. And I don't think our agents understand that that is why we pay dues. It's really about the influence. If you look at the slow decline of the independent contractor, which was a physician, so it starts out where, you know what, we're going to go work for a clinic. We don't have that independent contractor power we used to when we were all formed together. And so then doctors went to work for clinics, and they also had huge student loans, so they had to figure about that. But they worked for clinics and hospitals. So now a little bit of their independent contractor status is sort of like chipped away, right? Because now the clinic is determining how much they're going to make. You know, the hospital's determining how much they're going to make. And then we saw, you know, the onset then of the things like patient first, which is great. I'm not saying it's not wonderful. It is. I go there. But you see where you're having all these like minute clinics. Well, now it's like a bargain, right, to see a doctor. Yeah, you might have to wait, but, you know, it's a bargain to see a doctor. And now that doctor's wages with his $400,000 student loan have gone like this, right, to his income potential and earning power. Well, then all of a sudden, nobody's there to defend the industry. Now you've got all these drugstores, minute clinic, right? Where now it's even cheaper. You don't have to go to the doctor. You can just come to Walgreens or CVS. And so you kind of have to wonder, how much are those people being paid to give services? And then after that, it was like with especially with COVID, well, now we can do telehealth, right? Telemed. And I know our telemed here, personally, I pay $25 an office visit. So I'm meeting with a doctor and it's only costing me $25. How much is that doctor getting paid if I'm only paying $25? And I recently read that they are talking about replacing the doctors on telemed with AI, because AI can be so much more accurate and supposedly be better at diagnosing. And I look at that and I'm like, there was nobody there as all these incremental changes happened, because people said, I don't want to pay dues to the American Medical, so I'm not getting any benefit out of this, not understanding that advocacy is the main benefit of any trade association. And look what it slowly just has eroded that field. And I believe that there's shortage of doctors and nurses because they can't make the money that they need to, especially with the educational costs to get there. So, and that's always kind of my tale of warning. It's like, let's not become, you know, the American Medical Association where we have no political power. And then somebody says, well, you know, AI could do a better job. I've actually read some articles, I don't know if you all have, about how AI can replace the buyer's agent. Google it. Because there's several articles right now on it. And it's like, again, that is why you need your trade association. And that's why it's really important that we give to RPAC, so we have legislators that are willing to listen to us. But even if you can't do that, vote, because be engaged. go to Hill Day, go to DC, talk to your senator, talk to your congressman, tell them how important it is that veterans be represented in a buyer's transaction. Tell them how important it is that the first-time home buyer actually has representation. And what I think will hurt consumers is I think we're going to end up seeing attorneys having attorneys representing the buyers. And in some states, that's already the case where you have to have an attorney review the transaction. I know in Illinois, you cannot close without an attorney's review. But, it would be a shame to think that they would have to go that route to even be represented, and it will be more expensive. Again, I think the big winners here in this whole thing were the attorneys all the way around. It's like in the tobacco settlements, but that's my personal opinion. I don't know that to be true. But any other questions? I really want you guys to go look at Backstock Realtor because it's so comprehensive and it's telling you every day what we're trying to accomplish. So.
Could I jump in and say something?
Yes.
It's not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. I'm part of Daryl Davis power program coaching. It's like $50 a month. So it's
great.
There's a lot to offer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to the point about the how much we make, a couple different sources he pointed to, the average pay for an agent is between $48,000 and $50,000.
Correct. That's what NAR says too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing, concerning the appraisals, like he said, one of the things you can do with the commission is find out what your final price is going to be. And then if the commission is not being covered by the other side, you can add it in over the sales price. And then people say, well, what about the appraisal? And he says, if it's not appraising for 515, it's not going to appraise for 500. 3% is not going to make a difference in the majority of the cases. So, I think the whole thing is just, we're going to have to take a couple extra steps when we're talking to buyers and sellers and just really validate the industry and us as realtors first before we can get into talking about fees and how much we charge, that kind of thing.
I agree. And I also know that there's talk of seller concessions being in the notes in the MLS. So, it's like, no, I can't, I'm not going to pay your commission, but I'm going to give you a $5,000 closing credit or something of that nature so that you can pay that commission. The thought of taking out a personal loan to pay commission is really frightening to me, especially knowing how expensive housing is already. So as specifically in our area, one of the things that I'm hear a lot is, well, then why am I even, in the MLS? Why are we even doing this? The MLS, it always was a tool for cooperation and compensation, right? That's what it really was, not necessarily a marketing tool. But before we were computerized, God, I'm really aging myself. Everything was in books, and they used to have what they called bilateral and unilateral. There's unilateral ones as well. Bilateral offer of compensation, which was just a letter from broker A to broker B. Hey, on my transactions, I'm going to pay any cooperating broker X amount of dollars. I mean, that was the way it was done for many, 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 many years. I also think that people have really short memories. And so some of this may not be so much on top of mind of the consumer as it is right now. But, also we've had other things that were supposedly going to destroy our industry. But because we have had strength in numbers, because we have been so incredibly strong, it's fine. I remember when the internet was invented, everybody thought that was going to be the end of the industry. Everybody thought, well, I'm not going to name names, but there's been so many different things that supposedly were going to, just destroy it. And realtors have always come through in the end. So.
Can I make a comment?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Yeah, first of all, thank you, Dr. Kennedy. This has been really helpful. You really, the main questions I had for today pretty much answered. One had to do with like, how do we deal with VA buyers? And obviously we don't really know yet.
We don't, yeah.
Yeah, and the other one is how, is Rain gonna deal with it? And we don't know that either. So I guess we just have to wait for those answers.
Yeah.
But the other thing I just want to say is, we have to really work harder at showing our value.
I
And
agree
think
100%.
that is, I think we do offer an extremely important value, and I don't think a lot of the public understands
Understand.
that, and we
Yeah.
just have to be better about really putting it out there. So
I agree. So one of the things that I heard kind of piggybacking on that is, well, other agents that aren't realtors are ethical. Yeah, that's true. But what makes our code of ethics different is we require brokers to cooperate with each other. They have to ethically work together to the best interest of the client. Agents don't have to follow that. I'm saying non-realtor agents. That's the real thing. Yeah, they can be ethical, but what if the other party isn't? And it's like, that's a really strong thing that we can promote. It's like, we made a promise to you when we became a realtor, you, Mr. Joe Q. Public, we made a promise that we would cooperate with other brokers, other agents in your best interest. Back to Rain. If you go on Rain's website, they do have 2 podcasts. They don't really say a whole heck of a lot. I listened to both of them, but they might be worth listening to. And I think that settlement is going to be kind of top of mind. We are having a broker, VAR's coming, Virginia Association of Realtors, is on Monday, is going to be here at HRRA with their legal team and their public relations person to talk to the brokers about the settlement and the lawsuits. So I would encourage Barry to attend that, and Matt as well. It's free. I mean, it's early in the morning, so they can get on their day, but they're going to talk about kind of like the next step sort of thing. And I did invite Rain to participate, and they declined. So I think they just don't know where they're at yet. And they have not been named in any of the suits. So maybe they're hoping to just keep flying under the radar. I don't know. But I know that again, we have protections because of that. We don't have an association MLS, so we're not necessarily being focused on. And I think that's a really, really big thing. So, and again, the settling thing, the way I hear it is they just had to stop the bleeding. There were going to be a gazillion lawsuits all across the United States. And I still greatly disagree with the ruling that somehow we were inflating prices. Then, okay, I know how much attorneys cost in this area because I researched it for y'all to make sure we weren't overpaying. And, it's like they all charge the same amount. Plumbers all charge the same amount. I got locked out of my house about 3 months ago, stupidly got locked out of my house. I called 3 different locksmiths. They were all the same price. So it's the market that determines wages, right? I mean, it's not like you all got together and said, here's what we're going to do. And I think if anything, I was talking to a broker the other day, and he said, if anything, that antitrust is what we got right. Like, we say it at every committee meeting. We do the antitrust statement at every board meeting. Our realtors are very conscientious of not violating antitrust laws, and it's been hammered into their heads. So it's so odd that this is what is hurting us at the time.
Yeah, Daryl showed in one of the webinars, that Catchmark law group, it's only 4 attorneys.
Yeah.
It's not some great big, 100 attorney firm. And, they're going to net, well, like probably over $100 million.
Yeah, millions and millions.
And meanwhile, the home sellers, like you said, they're not going to really recoup much.
No.
Definitely not the commission that they
Especially if it's the
overpaid.
whole United States that's piling on. I mean, that's where that's when the class action suits really are so effective for the attorneys and not for the public, because they go back to the tobacco thing. All the states did actually get money out of that, but the individual smoker who bought Marlboro cigarettes forever and ever, they got nothing, and it's just, I think that home sellers the media is skewing it a certain way, and they have misunderstood really what cooperative compensation is really all about. And they're thinking, geez, I can save all this money. And we know that, if you really were interested in saving all that money, go to a FSBO, but then know you're probably going to get about 18% less for your home without the help of a realtor. It's a vicious circle. But again, I think that as long as we don't panic, because there's nothing to panic about, if we remember that less than 25 years ago, there wasn't a way to offer cooperative compensation through an internet-based MLS. If we remember what we stand for and what we do, I think we'll be just fine. The trick is making sure that our own members are educated. And I don't know if that's the case. I was reading some stuff today, and I'm like, realtors commenting on a podcast, and I'm like, wow, they don't even know what they're paying dues for. It was kind of shocking to me, some of the comments I read. But I think HRRA does, I mean, you guys are great. I think HRRA does a lot to try and make sure that its members know what's happening, what's going on. And that my final comment is, we refer to HRRA as kind of like this separate entity, but it's not. It's you're HRRA, right? And people like refer to NAR did this, NAR did that. Well, NAR isn't a thing. NAR is like 1.5 million members, so the members got together and said, this is what we're going to do. And the members elect people. So you don't have 1.5 million in a room. You elect your president. Your local president is a member of the NAR board of directors, and they go to board of directors meetings and they make those decisions. And so I think it's important to not say the association is outside of the practitioner. No, you are the association. All of you make up the association. Without you, there is no association. It's really important. I just feel that you all are the gatekeepers of the American dream. I feel that without you, if there would not be the widest distribution of land to the widest population, there would not, because that is if you just look at over 100 years at the litigation and the legislation that we have either prevented or promoted. For example, I don't know, many people don't know that NAR and the National Mortgage Bankers Association, we created the 30-year mortgage with President Hoover. That was a realtor creation. Look at how many people benefit now from a 30-year mortgage. And that was done by the realtors, and it wasn't the home builders. I misspoke. It was the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. National Association of Home Builders hadn't been formed yet, but they went and worked with President Hoover and said there's got to be a way for people to be able to purchase land and start a home and pursue the American dream. And you all have always stood between legislators and corporate interests and the average American citizen who just wants a house, a place to raise his kids or her kids, and wants to feel safe and sheltered. That's you guys always standing there as the barrier. And I think that there's people that look at that and go, wow, there's so much money to be made in that industry. And we could really, do a lot if we kind of push some of these home buyers out. Right now, I encourage you all to research how much home equity firms, private equity firms are buying up housing. They have a lot of money. They have cash offers. They can outbuy your typical buyer. And that's another corporate interest that's looking at you all as a pot of money. So I think the real end goal here is to kind of get rid of you as a political force. That is my fear, but that's just me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kennedy. I know we are just about out of time, everybody.
Yeah.
So does anybody have last question they'd like to ask before we? No? Well, Doctor, again, thank you so much. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And if you have any follow-up material, I think you had mentioned if you wanted to send it over, yeah, you can just
I
send it
will.
to Barry and I's email, and we'll get it out from there. But
Perfect.
this was great, extremely helpful, and we really appreciate it.
Well, like I said, my third run at doing this presentation. So I apologize for all the stumbling. Like, I'm much better off the cuff about things that I actually know about. And then all the settlement stuff is new, right? And I mean, I know some of it just by being in the industry forever, but thank you for being patient with me as I fumbled around with technology a little bit. And thank you for being members. If anybody hasn't said that to you lately, thank you for being members. Thank you for standing up for the average American. It's incredibly important, and thank you. So, all right.
Well,
Have a great
great.
day, everybody.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.